So much for coming on. I think it's been almost exactly a year since we first met in Dallas.
Yeah, at the multifamily conference, right? That's
Yeah,
wild. I remember I walked in and you were like the first person, and I was like, oh, let me just sit next to them, and
yeah,
full circle, right?
yeah. Have you, I feel like since then you have completely, maybe not completely changed, but you've changed a lot of what you're doing and seems like you've really been skyrocketing since then. And that's been cool to see. I'd like to talk a little bit about how you got into real estate, when you got into real estate, and kind of your experience thus far in the journey.
Okay, let's take it there. So when I got started in real estate, I probably read a lot about real estate back in 2020 after COVID kind of started. Silver lining and all of that was really I had a lot more time to read, and I start really thinking about my future. So come 2021 in August, we finally closed on our first Airbnb property. And I think that's probably the one I showed you back in Dallas when I first met you. It was a bachelorette Airbnb themed towards girls' trips, celebrating their last hurrah before their wedding. And it was a life changing investment because not only did we get like $100,000 in bookings within like 4 weeks after we went live for that property, but come April of 2022, when we got our appraisal back, the home that we bought for 800 grand and we invested about $126,000 into it was appraised for 1.15 million. So that was really cool because that was a day when my partner and I, having both come from an affordable housing background, that was the day we both became millionaires. And it was really, really cool to kind of celebrate that. We're still locked down during COVID. So we just had a FaceTime. We had one shot, even though we didn't drink the entire time during COVID. And it was cool to celebrate that. So our experience has been tremendous and really rewarding, not without its ups and downs, but it was really, really cool to know that impact we're having on people, the returns that we're able to get for our investors. It's been a wild run, and I really am excited for the next couple of years because there's a
Yeah,
lot of positive momentum in life right now, and I'm absolutely loving life.
yeah. Do you still own that Airbnb?
Yeah, we do. We still own that Airbnb. Um, we have like over 75 reviews, and all except for one 4-star review, they've been all 5 stars. So it's been pretty really cool.
Wow, that's impressive. So, did you continue down the path of the themed Airbnbs for a while? Do you still do that, or how has that changed?
Yeah, so we changed up our strategy a little bit. So after we acquired our second Airbnb in Scottsdale as well and turned to a bachelorette Airbnb, interest rates started going up really high. And a lot of times the deals that used to pencil at a lower interest rate just didn't pencil anymore. So that was a perfect time because our strategy was always to balance our portfolio with short-term rentals, higher risk, higher cash flow, with a little bit lower risk on the long-term rental side, specifically for affordable housing, since typically if you have a housing choice voucher that is previously known as a Section 8 voucher, it's government-backed rent that's paid on time every single month, no matter what, even if the tenant loses their job. So it was also a recession-proof investment, and I think those are the types of investments that really helps you sleep at night.
Yeah. When did you first get into affordable housing? What made you feel like that was a good path to go? And I guess what is affordable housing for people that don't know what that is?
Oh, that's a great question. So affordable housing is almost like a very, very broad term in of itself, even
Yeah.
though you can niche down specifically within affordable housing. Affordable housing sounds niche, but it's so wide and broad. So I define affordable housing as someone that is renting that unit or house as someone that doesn't spend more than a third of what they make on housing, rent, mortgage, whatever that is. Now, I have a Section 8 rental in just outside of Birmingham, Alabama, and it was for a fully seller finance deal. We got on a creative finance, so we did 15% down at 2.5% interest rate that we just closed a couple months ago, so very recent. But I first started getting involved in affordable housing just by starting my podcast. And originally, I started the podcast maybe about October of last year, so just almost a year ago. And I started a podcast on affordable housing and real estate investing because I wanted to invest in affordable housing, but I didn't know how to be successful in affordable housing yet. I've heard from other folks like Ashley Hamilton and Dr. Joe Azamoah on the Bigger Pockets podcast. And that's why I really got intrigued with the thought of affordable housing. I get the strategy behind it. I understand how you can be profitable while also keeping your expenses very low. How do I actually do it? So I started a podcast and I just brought on a bunch of different folks that range from your single family mom and pop landlords, does the Section 8 rental to a single family, to ground up construction developers that are building apartment buildings for affordable housing, because I really want to establish, one, how do you get involved with affordable housing? And what are the options to get involved with affordable housing? And what's the process to invest in affordable housing? And ultimately, what are the mistakes that you would like to avoid making that other people have already experienced, and they can share with you their mistakes? And ultimately, how you can learn from them on avoiding it altogether. So that was the whole genesis behind affordable housing and developing a podcast. And to be fully transparent, I started that podcast before I had an affordable housing. Right.
Wow.
But my goal with that podcast was always to ask questions on behalf of my audience, to make sure I'm asking questions that, hey, one, I'm really curious to learn, but I know that if I'm asking these questions, somebody else probably has that question. And at first, I was really nervous. I was begging people to come onto my podcast. So nowadays, I understand how much work it is to start a podcast. So anytime someone asks me to come on a podcast, I say yes right away, because I recognize how hard it was, because I really thought about quitting 2 months in.
Yeah.
There's no feedback. Nobody is watching your stuff. Nobody cares who you are. You're begging people to come on. And it's so hard. But I think the why behind affordable housing was really, really important to me, that it kept me going even when things got hard, or even when things were just completely silent, when you feel like you're all alone, but you keep going because your why is so important. And maybe this is why I could share my story. You okay if I share a little story?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm a first generation Chinese immigrant, and my dad came over with about $1,000 in his pocket. My mom's first job, she made about $3 an hour. And this was like late 1970s, early 1980s. And one night they were in their 2-bedroom apartment. They lived with 9 people in that 2-bedroom apartment. And it was like one of those cockroach infested places in the heart of Chinatown in Boston. Turn on lights, and then you hear like the cockroaches like just scattering and scurrying away. It's really, really gross. But they were living on the second floor, and one night they had $5,000 of cash out because they were getting ready to take that cash back home to China to repay some of their relatives to thank them for getting them over to the States. That night they got robbed. They lost all $5,000, and I'm not sure if you or your audience can imagine this, but imagine losing your entire years of salary between you and your significant other all in one night.
Yeah.
And for them, that was rock bottom. And the lesson there was, bad things will happen, but it's about how you respond to them. That's what matters. And my mom tells me the only thing that kept her going was being on the wait list, because that gave her hope. And that hope came from being on that wait list for affordable housing. Even though she waited about 3.5, 4 years before she got her apartment unit, she was in tears. She was overfilled with joy, because it meant that her kids can grow up in a place where there's a little bit more room, and she knew that they would be safe from any break-ins. So for me, that's why I'm on a mission now to create the largest affordable investment community in the United States, to one, share all the resources so people can know how to be successful in affordable housing, but really to get this wait list down. Because every single family I imagine putting into one of these rentals now is helping someone like my mom, who didn't know English, who was working so hard, just trying to put food on the tables and a roof over the kids' heads. Because I really want to get this wait list down. And when I was in affordable housing, it was 7 years for an apartment affordable housing unit. And in San Diego County right now, it's like 12 to 15 years.
Wow.
And 12 to 15 years is a incredibly long time, almost disheartening. Imagine you're just like a single mom and you're trying to get out of the hood, and someone tells you like 12 to 15 years, that's too late.
Yeah.
It's way too late. So that's really why I'm so driven behind this mission. It's like somebody, else needs its help, just like my mom did. And God forbid if someone wasn't there to help my mom, um, that'd be crazy. So I got this hope right now that I'm going to get the person that built the apartment building for my mom and myself onto the podcast eventually. Manifesting it right now. I want to find
Wow.
out who that is, but I think I want to bring them, the team, whoever they might be, to come onto the podcast so I can, one, publicly thank them, but also help them realize this is the true beauty of affordable housing. You are helping people that are going to help other people. So you are making an impact on lives that people that might not even that you might not met, that might not have even been born yet. And I think that's extremely, extremely rewarding to
Yeah.
know, because they say that generational wealth doesn't last more than 3 generations. So I really thought about it, like, on the day I die, how will I feel at peace? And the only way I will feel at peace is if I can say to myself with conviction, did I help enough people that if my kids or grandkids or great grandkids have any problems, will someone help them when the time comes? And that's the only way I'll feel at peace. It's like I got to help so many people that it's going to be undeniable that someone is going to pay it forward and help out our family in the future, because that's humanity at its best. So that's kind of my why behind affordable housing, and I just love it. I'm just so passionate about it. I'm not sure you can feel or tell by the energy. I'm just
We can
so
definitely
jazzed to
tell.
talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a super powerful story. I'm glad you shared that. It definitely gives a lot of light into why affordable housing is so important. And I honestly I don't know much about it. So that definitely opened a whole nother light and making me want to go do some more research about it after we get off here.
Yeah.
Affordable housing, is there data across the US of like what that list looks like in total for people that are waiting for these type of units, or what kind of data is out there to show the need for it?
I think if I were to give some tactical advice, the best thing you and your listeners can do today is to simply call your local housing authority. They might call them the Public Housing Authority, the PHA. And if you go there, just like I did to San Diego County, and you go there and ask a couple of questions. One is, what does the wait list look like for your affordable housing vouchers? They're really called the Section 8 vouchers, or HCV, Housing Choice Vouchers now. And ask them, what is the type of unit count that is in highest demand? Are people looking for a 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom, 6-bedroom properties? I don't know what that might look like, but that's how you're able to create a strategy of what product you're going after. After you know what product you're going after, then you can also look at what the fair market rents are for your area by looking up on the HUD's website, looking up by zip code what the maximum rent is, and then looking into how your local housing authority determines the rent, which is primarily dependent around rent reasonableness and rent affordability. So they might look at market rents in the area and say, hey, just because the HUD will say the maximum rent is $1,100, but all of my market rents are $800 for this unit of comparable quality and square footage and bedroom count, I'm only going to pay you $800. So I don't want any of your audience going out there and thinking like, oh, HUD says I have to pay $1,100, but not if the housing authority will not allow it. There's a lot of questions that you can ask your local housing authority to equip yourself with a target, laser, narrow focus on what you need to look for so that you can be successful.
Yeah.
Like, one really good example is I just had this guest, Dr. Joe Asamoah. He's been on the Bigger Pockets podcast about 3 times now, and his strategy is in Washington, D.C., a very, very expensive market, but high appreciation. He looks for properties with basements because he converts those basements in additional 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom properties. And a 5-bedroom property might rent for over $5,000 now. But guess what? A renter only has to pay a third of what they make. So one example he gave to me the other day is, I'm just going to use round numbers. Rent was $5,000. The tenant's portion was $150.
Wow.
So this person is paying $150 to rent a home that might normally rent for $5,000. Now, if you have a market rate tenant, chances are if they're paying $5,000 a month, they will probably move out in a year, 2 years, or 3 years because they could probably afford their own mortgage, right?
Yeah.
For a voucher holder, they might stay there forever because they're paying $150 to rent a $5,000 property. And when you think about your levers of how you drive bottom line profits for your business, you can raise the rent a little bit, or you can keep your expenses way down And in the middle, the bigger your gap is, that's your profit. So what's one way of going about it? Get a really, really quality product that can attract your tier one Section 8 voucher holders, families that are honest, that will take care of your home with pride and dignity, and that will want to stay there forever. Some of his tenants, like some of his longest tenants, are been with him for 26 years.
Wow. Yeah,
Think
you
about
know
that in your
what?
underwriting.
Now that you're saying that, I've listened to his Bigger Pockets episode, probably the first one, and I remember thinking that's so interesting that more people aren't doing this when you do have tenants that'll stay 10, 20 years and you don't have to worry about turnover and hopefully less maintenance and stuff like that. Why do you think more investors aren't doing this strategy?
This is the number one fight I'm going after because even within other folks want to talk about affordable housing, like the first thing that they say to me is, well, oh, they're Section 8 voucher holders, right? So chances are they're going to trash a place and tear up the place more often, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is probably from many, many years of propagation through the media and fear mongering, whatever you want to call it. But people associate affordable housing with the ghetto, with the projects, and they only associate with that. When in reality, this is probably why they changed the whole program from Section 8 vouchers to the housing choice vouchers, because they're trying to get away from that name that's been associated with Section 8. But that is a very big fight. How do you overcome and dispel the myth of people that live in these areas that are just hard workers, people like my mom who just needed a launching pad for their lives to have a stable home for their kids? Like, these are the people that you want to attract. So make sure you provide a home that, one, they love, they respect, and you treat them with respect, not treat them as people that are less than just because they are voucher holders.
Yeah.
And I think that's the number one fight I'm trying to go about it. And that's why I bring on not only investors, but every once in a while, I bring on folks that have lived in affordable housing and that are just incredible human beings today. Like, these are the people that grew up in affordable housing, that lived in affordable housing, and are contributing an amazing impact to helping people. Like, I had LT on my podcast. She's from the Subto community, and
Mm-hmm.
she's an amazing human being. But has she never been afforded that opportunity with affordable housing, she would not be the person that she is likely today.
Yeah.
But she is. And she is such a giver. She helps so many people. And I think that's really the stories I'm trying to tell, not just on how to make money, how to be profitable, how to avoid mistakes, but really tell the stories of people that grew up in affordable housing, that appreciates where they grew up, and also are trying to pay it forward. And I think that is sometimes something that we miss in all these podcasts when people only talk about the thousands of dollars they make from one property a month and the thousands and thousands of doors that they own.
Yeah.
I don't resonate with that. I resonate with, who are we helping in these homes and who else can I help? So, yeah,
Yeah.
that was a long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah. No, that was a really good answer. And I think that that's very true that there is something that, a connotation to Section 8 housing that definitely needs to be changed. So that is interesting that they changed their name. And I agree that probably is why. So, in theory, you could do affordable housing in any market with anything to single families to apartment buildings.
That is correct. I think in order for you to um, quote unquote accept housing choice vouchers, is simply you just got to make it available. And there's really like a three-pronged relationship. In your typical single family landlord relationship, it's just the landlord and a tenant. Now, just imagine there's one extra person on top, and that's your housing authority. The housing authority is there to, one, make sure that the tenant qualifies for the vouchers, but then two, there are like an intermediary with the landlord to, one, make sure that your housing is up to code and meets housing quality standards. And at the same time, there is a annual inspection, sometimes it might be biannual, depending on your city or county, to make sure that the home stays in good condition so that you are not being a slumlord, quote unquote, to your residents, because everybody deserves safe, clean, sanitary housing
Yeah.
wherever they live. So that's the main difference between a market rent tenant and a voucher holder, because you can accept a voucher anywhere you want, from your multifamily ground up construction new development to single family homes.
Yeah. What's the biggest lesson you've learned since you started doing your podcast and purchasing your own properties and making those affordable housing?
Oh, this is a good question. You're a great interviewer, Jade.
Thank you.
Seems like you've done this before.
A little bit.
All right. So the biggest lesson I've learned is learning to give the extra 15 minutes of preparation. And I think this applies to anywhere. I'm not sure if that's what you're expecting, but this is what I mean. Whenever I have gone on other podcasts, I have seen people say, hey, let's just wing it. And that's why I was really impressed with you when you sent me a list of questions. I was like, okay, she put some thought into it. But this is really important because now I have slowly gotten better and said, well, let me ask a question in a way that sequentially makes sense. So in case someone does want to listen to the podcast and leave the podcast episode with a plan of action, then there is something there for them to kind of follow upon. Or you prepare these questions to, one, build up your guest's reputation or his or her brand. And that gives them value and repays them for their time for coming onto your podcast to share value with your audience. And at the same time, make sure that you're asking questions in a curious manner on behalf of your audience. I think that's what's really important. And for me, once I realized that the podcast is not for me, it's for my audience and my guests, that made things so much easier and made me like infinitely less nervous when I go on podcasts now to interview people. Like, I just don't get nervous. I'm like, oh, I'm so excited to have this conversation because I get to ask all these questions for all these people. Because sometimes that's really all a podcast is. And I think that was the biggest lesson learned. It was like, how do I find the right guests and ask them the right questions to provide the most value for people? And in order to do that, I had to be a little bit more prepared. If I want to be better than the average podcast host and I want to become the best, what am I doing that separates me from the other podcasts? So that's probably the biggest lesson learned. And I think once you get around the right people, it's been a life-changing opportunity, and your mindset continues to get expanded. So it's been really, really, really cool.
Love that. I like that tip a lot. Where I see that your YouTube is on your name, when does your podcast go live, or when do you put those out?
Yeah, so I typically put them out every Thursday or Friday, just depending on the editing timelines. Like this week, I'll put on Friday. And I used to get really worried, like, oh, I'm going to miss on Thursday. But then things happen. And I learned to give myself a little bit more grace when I'm doing this now. So I was like, all right, worst case scenario, it goes on Friday. It's not the end of the world. And that has allowed me to forgive myself a little bit better and quickly move on and just keep focusing on the things that really matter instead of beating myself up over like a 1-day delay because of some issues happen on the tech with the video. So it's been, that's when I released the podcast, and I will probably be going into a weekly series now on top of my normal guest interviews on my podcast, where one of my mentors, Alvin Hope Johnson, I will be starting a weekly series with him. Well, I already started. And I will be covering a bunch of topics related to development, like, hey, how do you start a nonprofit? How do you use a nonprofit for affordable housing or for real estate investing? How do you leverage those relationships with your local government to create win-win-win solutions for everybody? How do you create jobs? How do you create more units? How do you build a team? How do you interview architects? How do you interview engineers? All these topics are topics that people don't typically talk about, and they get really into the weeds. And that's okay for me, because I think it's very important to show people tactically how to do things, because otherwise you get scared and you never do it because you don't know what's coming up next. Unfortunately, the truth is, like, everybody wants 100% certainty whenever they do something, which is not possible. So our goal is like, hey, let's just pull back the curtains, demystify the process, and just tell them exactly what we're doing. And if they resonate with us, they want to work together with us, let's do it. If not, then at least we helped them learn something that they might not have learned anywhere else when it comes to real estate development. Like, I'm learning skills that I have never imagined that I could have learned. And the strategies are incredible. Let me give you one example. So this deal didn't close, but we're looking at a property for 40 acres. And the selling price was about $6 million. I'm going to use round numbers here. It was 5.5, but I'm going to use 6. And we thought preliminary, we thought we could build about 900 apartments on it. Okay. Now, when you get the entitlements from the city or the county, which means entitlement is like you have a permission to build that number of units on that land, the value of your land increases right away after you get the stamp of approval. Now, even if you value each entitlement or each unit at $20,000 a piece, that property is now worth $18 million. So you have to work for it, but I think a lot of people will work a year to get 12 million bucks.
Yeah.
I'm very confident about that. So if you do that, right, you have now just forced the value of a $6 million piece of land to 18 million bucks. Not to say you don't have to do work, right? You still have to work with architects, engineers, get all the soft costs in, go to public hearings, make your case for affordable housing with the city and or the county to get your plan approved. But this is what your audience can do. If they find a seller that is amenable to better terms, which means this. First, you can negotiate for a lower EMD, earnest money deposit, just by simply telling the seller, like, hey, if you're a good negotiator, you will say, hey, Mr. Seller, you just want to see me have skin in the game, right? So instead of me giving you a big EMD, I'm going to be spending this money on due diligence reports like environmental studies, topographical surveys, geological studies, blah, 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 blah. And if I don't close on this property, Mr. Seller, then I will pay you back. I will give you the reports and you can keep that for your next buyer because that's going to be valuable to your next buyer anyways. And on top of that, if you're okay with it, Mr. Seller, we should negotiate a longer due diligence period because most sellers understand this. If I don't get the zoning change and the entitlements for the property, then the land is not worth what it's worth.
Yeah.
But if you get the seller to say, okay, I can stay in a deal for 365 days, and they'll probably only do it if you have credibility, like working with Alvin and myself, who are building 185 apartments right now in Wisconsin. We're building 400 apartments in Texas right now. They were like, okay, these people actually know what they're doing. They've actually had experience getting projects approved. That's the only reason they will actually stay in a deal. But guess what? At the end of this, if you get your entitlements for 900 apartments, you can now probably get a 50% LTV loan for 9 million bucks, right? Because 18 million, 50% is 9. Take 6 million of that, pay off the seller, and now you have another $3 million to get your blueprints, get construction docs, and build a property.
Wow.
Now what you have done? You have gotten a $18 million piece of property for a fraction of the cost. And that is creative finance at its finest. And when I first heard this, I was mind blown. I was like, wow, that is creative finance.
Yeah.
But with larger deals, you have way more leverage to pull. And I hope your audience just got $12 million of value from that deal right there.
Yeah, I bet they did. That's a really good piece of advice. If people do want to work with you, how can they work with you? Are you looking to add to your team? Are you looking for people to bring you deals?
Yeah, we're always looking for people to bring us deals. So Alvin and I, we have a goal to get 20,000 apartments in 5 years. Very, very significant goal, but that goal comes from helping people like you, Jade, get your 200 units and your partner, Myron, get 200 units. And that's how we get to 20,000 units. So what we realized is we need to just teach people how to do this. And we created a consulting company where our goal is to help aspiring developers not feel like they're on an island by themselves, to remove the fear from the process. So you know that someone's there to handhold you through the process. Well, we realized that we didn't want to create a mentorship program because I can give you all this information that you want, but every development project is so different. The questions you're going to get from the city and county are going to be so different that you really need someone just kind of handhold you through the process. But Alvin and I understand that, hey, in order to get 20,000 units, we also can't be in every single meeting with the county and in every single meeting with architect and engineers. But we will happily be by your side and be your consultant through that process. And in full transparency, our goal is that once you get to the point of entitlements and you are looking for a co-developer, because your lenders are going to look for someone on your team with development experience, just like in multifamily, they want to make sure you've done a multifamily project before, right?
Yep.
We hope that you will sign us on as your co-developer. And that's how you do it. That's how we partner together. So we not only have I given you guys advice on how to acquire the land, but we can also tell you guys like what land to go look for. Like just shooting off the hip, you want to look for a metropolitan statistical area population of 250,000 people or more. You want to look for areas that are not more than 30 to 40-mile drive from the downtown metropolis. You want to look for areas where the 4-person area median income is at least $80,000 or higher. And in general, we really want to look for projects that are at least $15 million, if not $50 million or more. And that's because we have talked to some investors, and that's a criteria that they have. And that's ultimately why we're only looking for development projects, because you don't want to start a development project where you don't have investors. This is kind of go back to the principle, like, you got to raise capital before you need the capital.
Yep.
Same principle. And that's why our strategy is really, really cool. I mean, Alvin has spent many years in real estate, and this is what we're doing on the tax exempt bond strategy now, where we're raising capital through tax exempt bonds, which is almost equivalent to like a primary mortgage on a single family side. But those bonds are collateralized and encumbered with the property. And we pay about 10% to 12% tax free on those tax exempt bonds. And if you're thinking about a net tax benefit number, that's like equivalent to like a 15, 16 or 17, 18% return on your money. Because if you're tax exempt on both the federal side and the state side, then that could be a tremendous amount of benefit for your investors. So it's just another way of financing your construction of your development projects. And I recognize that a lot of people get really scared with like very large projects. So we're here to help you guys navigate the different areas and different questions. And I'm just so thankful to be in this position to be able to share this information with you and your audience, because it's things I wish that there was a book that was written about it a long time ago that would just told all these secrets. But sometimes you have to meet the right people and find the right people that are willing and giving to openly share that information with people. So it's been really cool. And that's what the podcast has done for me. And I'm so excited to see your podcast, and honored to be here. Really, Jade. This is really, really cool.
Thank you. I'm glad you came on. I always see you in the Facebook group, and I'm so impressed how I swear every single post of a newbie, you're always like the first to comment and offer value. And I think that that's just the Subto community to its core is giving value, and you really show through that on, in your personal life and in Subto. So it's really amazing to have you here, and you've dropped some bombs on all of us, and you've given us some tactical advice to go and find some deals as soon as we leave here. Is there anything else that you're needing in your business right now, or anything else you think that the audience should know before they go out and start taking action on this?
Well, don't kick me off yet, Jade. What do you need in your business right now? That's what I want to know. What are you working on? Because I've seen tremendous amount of growth from you, Jade, and I see that you are on almost like every single, I don't know why, in my world, in my feed, it's like almost always a deal from Jade is locked up. Jade just locked his deal up. Jade just locked his deal up. Buy it. I'm like, oh my God, she's crushing it. What do you need in your business right now?
Yeah, I mean, we're just looking for more people to JV with. Our team, like our inside team, has shrunk a little bit, and we are kind of more focusing on JV deals now. So just always looking to have conversations with people and seeing how we can squat up and get deals across the line, especially for newbies that are having a little bit harder time on the phone or dispoing, stuff like that. But we're doing a lot of single family wholesaling. So yeah, right now I would just say that we're looking for more people that we can help JV on those deals that they're having a little hard time with.
Yeah, I mean, what are you guys doing? Are you guys like trying to hold like one in every 5 properties you guys wholesale? Like, what's your strategy right now?
I would say it's like 99% wholesaling right now.
Got
I
it.
am looking for a personal property to buy creatively in the Dallas area right now. Ideally a duplex. That seems kind of far-fetched, but that is what I'm looking for. Where's your multifamily in Texas?
It's in Princeton, so closer to McKinney.
Okay. Yeah, I want to move up there, and am looking for a property to purchase, but majority is just wholesaling.
That's awesome. I mean, for the audience listening right now, she's got the deals. Get on her list. That's what I'm hearing about. You got to get on Jade's list to get access to some of these deals. And I think this is why I've seen you grown exponentially too. It's like props to you. Amazing work for just staying so consistent and crushing it now. It seems like you have really found a place and you found a team and you guys are just crushing it. And I love watching you guys from the sidelines and seeing what you guys are doing, and the amount of consistency and the level of consistency is incredible to watch. It's so inspirational. So don't stop. Please don't ever stop.
Yeah, I think that that's a good lesson because a year ago when we met, I wasn't doing any deals at the time, and I was kind of just keeping to myself within the community and not staying as consistent. And then, really, probably a month or two after that event, I just was like, you know what, I need to get my shit together. And I started being consistent and just went all in, and things just have snowballed since then. So, it takes time sometimes, but once you find your place and find what you want to focus on, it's a rocket ship from there.
You are such an amazing example of that. I just love watching how much you've grown, and how much I've grown like together with you. It's like
Yeah.
it makes the journey incredibly less lonely when you know that, hey, Jade is crushing it today. I need to get my stuff together.
Yeah.
And I think people underestimate how much of impact that has on you in your journey, whatever your aspirations might be. It's like you got to get around people like Jade to just get a little sprinkle of her magic and be like, I got to do this because Jade's on it today. And if I'm not on it, then I'm going to let her down. And when you were like, hey, I need someone to interview, I was like, let me get on that list. I'm trying to get on Jade's podcast. Because that's the people I want to hang out around. And I think you are generally worth people's time from the effort that you're putting in. And I can't wait to see like what your personal brand and how much exponential growth that you're going to see another year. Because man, I only see upside for you now. I think I heard Ed Milet talking like, if I could buy stock in somebody, I would definitely buy stock in you, Jade, for sure.
I would buy your stock too. You're like, I mean, you've done amazing at building your personal brand and, podcasts on Instagram. I think you've really just turned yourself, like everyone knows Kent's the affordable housing guy. Like if you have a question, go to Kent.
Oh, wow.
You've done really good at making, building your own brand and putting it towards something you're really passionate about. So I look up to you a lot when it comes to building my personal brand, and I am excited to see where you take it.
We should just be doing a development deal together. Or we do turn some of our single family homes into affordable housing. We can also do that too. At the same time, I got some private money partners that want to deploy some cash, and we're looking for deals. And I don't see why we can't scale together to crush some deals and take down some deals together. Like I would love to be on your buyers list, Jade, and I would love to do a deal with you somehow, some way. And I just can't wait for us to do some really, really big deals together, because what I have realized is sometimes bigger deals is just more commas and zeros. That's really it. The amount of effort that we go through to look for a deal is probably the same. Like I'm sure you're a master negotiator now, Jade. Now you know how to negotiate a deal for multi-million dollars, right? Now all of a sudden, when you're on your call with sellers, like, hey, do you have anything else? And then all of a sudden you get someone's like, oh, I got some land over here. And that's all that happens. And now all of a sudden, Jade, now you're like, hey, maybe I can build 200 apartments here. Yeah. Whoa, that's it. That's it. That my whole goal with this podcast was just to share somebody like, hey, if you ever come across something that looks like this is how you might want to approach it. And then if you need someone with credibility that has done development deals, jump on a call with your seller to help you close on a seller, we can jump on that call with their seller too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's so cool. What you're doing is like so many JVs, because you have removed so much fear from somebody's life about approaching a conversation. And that is just so invaluable. Like what you're doing is really, really making an impact, not only on the seller, on that JV partner, but you're really making a really, really cool impact, Jade. And I commend you on that. Incredible.
I appreciate that. You just rang a bell in my head. I had this seller that we were working with him to buy his property. And then he, at like the very end of like after talking to this guy for weeks and weeks, he's like, oh yeah, I actually own like a bunch of land like all over like Arizona, Colorado, like all these places. And I kind of just shrug it off because I don't do anything with land, so I didn't think too much of it. But now you have me thinking I need to go figure out the details on that land.
Yes. And then you just do the same filters I talked about. Hey, make sure it's 4% AMI. It's quick filters.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're like, hey, this deal might pencil. And now you can just start a conversation, just like seeing, like putting some feelers out there. Hey, would you be amenable if you stay in the deal a little bit longer? Would you be okay? We don't give you a big EMD because we got to spend all this money, Mr. Seller. And I would much rather spend it on land than just let it sit in an escrow account tied up doing nothing. Doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
It's about how you negotiate, and you're a master closer. So now there's no reason why you can't be closing on all these deals now.
Yep. Yep. Well, I'm manifesting. We're going to do a deal together in the next few months. We got to get one and hopefully lots more.
Yes. I can't wait, Jade. This is I really can't wait. I'm just so jazzed about this. I hope you can really tell. This is genuine. Like, I'm really excited. I'm just so happy seeing your face after I haven't seen you for almost a year. This is so cool. I see your social media blowing up. The amount of traction you're getting is so cool. I love watching it. I love cheering for you on the sidelines. I can't wait to do a deal with you.
I think everyone needs a friend like Can't He in their lives.
Hey, I mean, you gotta work to deserve it, right? And I think you have definitely done the work, and you have shown that you're consistent. Because, hey, look, we only want to work with A players, right? Life is too short to work with B players.
Yep.
So I think for your audience out there right now, like the questions that I used to go through in my brain was like, hey, why on earth would people want to listen to me? Why on earth would people want to partner with me? Why would they? There's so many better people out there. But if you just genuinely commit to providing value to people, and that means a lot of different things. I know providing value is a general term that I like to bring around. Like what Jade is doing right now is bringing value to her audience. She brought me on to share my secrets with her listeners so that her listeners get something out of it. That is very, very selfless. Very, very selfless. She has taken her time to prep for this interview, ask some questions so I can come a little bit more prepared and talk a little bit more intelligently so I can give the most value possible to her audience. That's one way of providing value. Another way of providing value that I have found is like I underwrite deals and I post them on YouTube and I show people this is how I analyze whether a deal is a good deal. That's it. That's how, frankly, I've raised capital from people. People were like, oh, you know how to analyze a deal. You learn how to spot a deal. So next time there's a deal comes up, let me know. That's one way to provide it. People underestimate how much time underwriting takes. If you can save someone 30 minutes a day from having to analyze every single deal that comes across the table, that's really valuable. Very, very, very valuable. Or just pointing someone like, hey, work with Jade because she's got all the deals. That's providing some value to somebody else. It's like, oh, this person connected me, Jade, because Jade's got the deals. Jade's got the gold, right? That's how you provide value. And I think never, ever discount yourself. And just remember what you're doing right now, everybody is watching. Everybody's watching, whether you know it or not. So some of my partners that have partnered with me have known me since 8th grade. Do you think if I was an honest person since 8th grade and working really hard every single day at whatever I do, if that didn't make an effect or make them believe in me more, like that was it. They didn't invest in the deal, they invested in me. And don't you dare take that for granted at any day of the time. You better be working and hustling for your investors because it's their near and dear money that they have earned. And you owe it to them to do the best of your ability to protect their capital no matter what. So
yeah.
That's
wow.
it.
I think that tip alone was worth $1 million. Simply getting on YouTube, sharing some value, and then you get private money lenders. I mean, it's so true. When you're building your personal brand and showing that you put value first and you're there to give and not take, then things naturally just come to you.
Yeah.
So good.
I mean, Jay, you must see so many newbies coming in and like looking to you for advice now. And sometimes they're like, well, how do I get private money lenders? I was like, I know it sounds hard to believe, but you just have to give so much value away that it's undeniable that you will take care of their money when the time comes. And if you give and give and give without any expectation of return, which I genuinely do, like I try to help at least one person every single day, no matter what it is. If you genuinely try to improve their lives without any expectation of return, I think that's when the magic really happens. People can tell if you're desperate. People can tell if you really need the money. People can tell if you're chasing a wholesale check. How you attract these deals is like, oh, I'd rather let my partner win as much as possible because they're bringing all the capital to the table, right? And sometimes you just need a little bit of options or a hint or a sample of options to do. It's like, look, I get 50. So for some of my deals that I have with my private money partners, they bring all the capital to the table. So one example, my second Airbnb that I bought, my partners put in $200,000. I put in 50 grand of my own money. But what happened was they took a loan out under their name. I've known them since 8th grade, so they have a tremendous amount of trust with me. And what we do is, hey, even though we're 50-50 partners, the first $75,000 of cash flow that went to me goes back to them first as a faster return of capital, because the total capital outlay is 250. So in order to be 50-50, I really should have contributed 125, but I only put in 50. So I said, I'm okay foregoing my capital for $75,000 of cash flow so that they get their money back first. So for me, if you have a W-2 job or you have a regular wholesaling operation like Jade does, now all of a sudden you can generate enough capital, build up wealth by investing and securing sources for deals. And now all of a sudden you own property that you might have never been able to own, but you were able to because you put your investors' interests first and foremost. And that's how you raise capital.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think that people can forget that, especially when you're new and you're just hungry for money.
Mm-hmm.
The relationships and the long-term play is always going to outweigh your short-term gain. Like maybe you can go make an extra $2,000, but is that $2,000 worth that relationship that you're going to throw in the trash? Probably not.
That's right.
So
That's
yeah,
right.
it's important to think about, no matter if you're raising capital, doing a wholesale deal, or whatever the structure is.
Yeah. And I think if you anticipate that one day, hey, I'm gonna be the good person no matter what. I'll always be the good guy I'll always be the bigger person no matter what. But one day when you get screwed over, you will get screwed over, right? Eventually it has to happen. And you'd be like, oh, that's cool. I was expecting that to happen. All right, kind of move on. I'm gonna still be myself.
Yep.
That's what's gonna make you successful in the long term. And that's what's gonna attract the investors that have 10, 12, 50, $100 million to invest with you on a development deal.
Yep.
So that's always going to be way more important. And knowing the story that an investor can tell about their experience working with you and investing with you, that's probably the most important thing to me. It's like, I would much rather have my partners rave about their experience with me than them bringing up like, oh, Ken was trying to nickel dime us on $2,000 here and there. I was like, stop, right? Stop. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
Work with someone like Jade, invest with her, and all of a sudden you start owning properties and access to deals that you might have never gotten access to. And I think if you try to make sure there's always a win-win-win relationship, that's how you get to really, really be successful and really take off really quick, really fast. And I just can't wait to do a deal with you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just went on a little tangent, but I love talking about these things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also valuable, and I'm sure that everyone in the audience is going to get value from this. So you dropped, I think, nugget after nugget. So thank you so much for coming on. I'm so honored you agreed, and last minute too. So I really appreciate it, and I look forward to doing some deals with you.
Yeah, let's do it. If anybody has questions, I answer all my DMs. Make sure you DM me on Instagram at invest with Kenthe, KENTHE. And you can find my podcast at youtube.com/@Kent_HE. And please subscribe. And if you guys are so kind, please leave me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Shameless plug, but I've had some people that are haters that left 1-star reviews just because they're politically motivated against affordable housing, and it's okay. But I need the support and positivity from your community, Jade. So we really appreciate it. And thanks for letting me talk about the Affordable Housing Podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah, go check out his podcast. I'm sure this was only a small snippet of all the information he has. So go take a listen if you're interested. Reach out to him for questions. And if you have any deals, send them to Kent. He'll get them closed.
All right. Thank you, Jade.